Consider this before viewing addiction. What does it mean to be addicted to something? Think of substances that cause addiction. As you watch the program, consider how different systems in the body react as a person becomes chemically dependent. Note specific damage done to the brain, liver, and lungs when someone abuses alcohol, nicotine, or drugs. Assignment Discovery now presents Addiction.
When you're in the heat of your addiction, the drug takes over, it controls your life.
Addiction is the single most preventable cause of premature death in the United States. Now scientists are probing our brains to find out exactly where and why addiction occurs. And they're hot on the trail of the genes that may lead to addiction and a vaccine that may someday make us immune. I'm Kat Carney. Join us as we take an up-close and personal look at the often devastating problem of addiction. When we think of addiction, we usually picture illegal drugs. But most of our addictions are everyday. 50 million Americans addicted to cigarettes, 11 million to gambling, and 14 million to the perilous pleasure of alcohol. Dot McAdams is a recovering alcoholic.
I think it was a long time into my drinking before I actually felt I didn't have any control. I would think every once in a while that I would maybe not drink this evening, and I would go for an hour or two maybe, but all I could think of was that drink. Because drinking meant I didn't have to face emotions, I didn't have to deal with situations, I could just escape.
Soon, alcohol wasn't enough, and she mixed her drinks with prescription drugs.
I drank my pills with my booze. That's how I swallowed them, with 80 proof scotch or whiskey or whatever bottle came out of the cabinet.
Dot's years of heavy drinking and drug use took a serious toll on her body. In 1983, a doctor took one look at her and admitted her to detox.
When I came into treatment, I was scared. I was really scared. Fear, because deep down inside I knew that I was going to be giving up my best friend. And it may sound funny to say that, but the booze and the pills had become my best friends.
But these are friends that can kill. A longtime alcoholic who suddenly stops drinking can develop extreme anxiety, fever, frightening hallucinations, uncontrollable shaking, and tremors. It's called delirium tremens, or DTs. Those are just some of the milder symptoms. More severe effects, like seizures and fluctuating blood pressure, can kill. But a detox program aims to avoid all of these dangerous symptoms.
The detox process can be done in a couple of days, and it can be done very safely and very efficiently so patients are not uncomfortable.
It only takes about 48 hours to be rid of the physical addiction and withdrawal symptoms. But that doesn't mean you're cured. It can take a lifetime to overcome the psychological addiction. Individual counseling and organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous help build self-esteem, confidence, and friendships once found only in the bottle. Research has shown success rates of over 80% for people in long-term recovery programs. Because of her treatment and continued therapy, Dot McAdams has not had a drink in over 20 years.
Because of treatment, I know that a drink or a drug doesn't have to be the answer to everything. Thanks to my treatment experience, I've been able to reclaim my identity. my self-esteem, the identity I tried so hard to bury in a bottle of booze and a bottle of pills. Thanks to my treatment experience, I have a real awareness, a keen awareness of the importance of life, and a deep reverence for the quality of it.
Ronald Bianchi is a jazz musician. Though he spent most of his nights in bars, only recently, when he quit his day job as a school teacher, did his drinking get out of control.
At first I thought I could just stop any time, but when I started seeing that I couldn't really, I just didn't know where to turn.
For Ronald, it was the cravings, the nagging urge that kept him drinking. A visual cue, a smell, or even a memory can activate the desire. Overcoming cravings is often the key to overcoming addiction. Today, Ronald is here at the Providence, Rhode Island VA Medical Center. He's part of a study to see if this small pill called naltrexone may alleviate his desire for alcohol.
Naltrexone can help people deal with some of those cravings. It also helps people if they do have a slip. Naltrexone seems to reduce the pleasure of drinking alcohol.
When we drink, alcohol enters our bloodstream and is carried to the brain. It attaches to receptors in the opioid system that control pain and pleasure. Alcohol stimulates the pleasure system. That's why we like it so much. The drug may work by blocking the opioid receptors. The result, we do not get the same kick from alcohol. It breaks the addiction at the most basic level, pleasure. Ronald has been taking 2 pills a day for 3 months. Naltrexone has been used to treat heroin addicts for 20 years. Just recently, it was approved by the FDA for alcoholism. But experts caution that these pills will never replace therapy.
There's no such thing as a magic pill that'll entirely help. When people come into treatment with addiction, they have a whole host of problems. They have a whole host of psychosocial problems. Often they have family problems, marital problems, legal problems, and no pill's going to help with that. And people need counseling and education to really help them put their lives back together.
Addictive drinking can cause many physical problems, but the liver is in particular danger. Let's learn how. Hi, Marcia.
Hey, Kat, how you doing?
I'm good. I think I'm looking at some livers here, but this one doesn't look too healthy.
This is a very unhealthy liver. This liver has cirrhosis.
So what happens to the liver when it has to process too much alcohol?
Well, you know, your liver is your main chemical factory in your body. It's the area in your body that everything you eat, everything you drink goes through that, and it detoxifies or processes what goes through. So when you drink a glass of alcohol, it's going to go to the liver.
Now, how much do you have to drink before cirrhosis sets in?
Well, you know, that's a difficult question because some people can drink just maybe what we would consider moderate amounts and become cirrhotic, and other people are drinking very large amounts and become cirrhotic. There's sort of an individual difference, but I think daily drinking with, 3 or 4 glasses a day, 5 glasses a day could put you at risk.
Now, where is the cirrhosis on here? What does that look like?
Well, the cirrhosis is really this knobbiness that you see in the liver. And if we take a normal piece of liver, you see how smooth the surface is right here?
Big difference.
Big difference. And this is due to the fact that many liver cells have died and we've gotten scar tissue, and the scar tissue is pulling down on that liver, making it look very knobby.
Alcohol is toxic. It eventually destroys the liver cells.
The final end stage would be when your liver cells are not working at all, and then you cannot live because you need to be able to detoxify all these things that come through your body.
Cirrhosis strikes 3 million people each year in the United States.
there's a saying in here that you weren't arrested, you were rescued. And fortunately, in my instance, I was rescued. If it wasn't for my incarceration, I'd still be doing the hateful, deceitful, manipulative things I did out there in order to get my fix.
Danny Megna is living proof that addictions can sometimes so overpower people that they lose control over their use of a substance despite the terrible consequences. In Danny's case, he ended up forging checks to support a $300 a day heroin addiction until he landed in prison. It's estimated that 85% of all incarcerated people have committed crimes because of addiction.
When you're in the heat of your addiction, the drug takes over, it controls your life. You know, for someone with education and someone with some halfway decent background to look back and say, I let a $10 bag of a white powdery substance take complete control of my life, it's heart-wrenching.
It's mind-boggling that a drug can take such control over somebody's life, as it did to Danny, until you see just what drugs do in the brain. These primates, studied by Bertha Madras of Harvard Medical School's Department of Psychiatry, will show just where addictive drugs go in the brain. Madras is trying to pinpoint exactly where cocaine does its dirty work. Her experiment will use this frozen monkey brain weighing less than half a pound. It comes from a rhesus monkey that died of natural causes. A razor-sharp blade slices paper-thin cross-sections of brain tissue, which quickly melt onto room-temperature slides. The brain slices get a bath of cocaine molecules, each tagged with a radioactive tracer. Finally, they are exposed to X-ray film for an entire month. The radioactivity appears on the X-ray and reveals precisely where in the brain cocaine is absorbed. This is your brain on drugs.
The first step in understanding how an addiction begins is to find out where the drug goes in the brain. The areas that contain the most radioactivity stain the film the darkest. These red areas are the ones that contain very dense amounts of cocaine. These areas also are the richest areas in the brain of dopamine.
Dopamine is one of the chemical communicators between nerve cells. When our brain releases dopamine, it is often sending a message of pleasure. Cocaine is a chemical imposter of dopamine. It lodges in dopamine receptors, keeping the neurotransmitter from being reabsorbed. The excess dopamine floods the synapses. The sensation is one of pleasure. Madras hopes that her understanding of what happens in the brain will lead to the development of pharmaceuticals that can block the effects of addiction. Understanding addiction can't come soon enough for Danny Megna. Once he's released from prison, temptation is waiting.
I'm scared to death every day that I'm going to be out there because I know that I had put heroin above everything before. Family, friends, money, job, nothing mattered. And if I go out there again, once that substance injects into my veins the first time, that's my one true love. And it's got to change. It's got to change or I'm coming right back here.
Smoking cigarettes is the #1 addiction in the United States. Many experts say the cigarette is nothing more than a nicotine delivery system. When a person takes a puff, nicotine is absorbed so quickly it reaches the brain in only 10 seconds. Like cocaine and heroin, nicotine is an imposter for one of the brain's neurotransmitters. It floods the system, giving a quick, intense feeling of pleasure. While nicotine causes the addiction, other components of cigarettes cause the health problems. Smokers inhale over 4,000 chemicals, including 43 potentially cancer-causing substances, in order to get their fix. The result is more deaths than AIDS, motor vehicle accidents, homicide, and suicide combined. And yet 25% of Americans continue to smoke. That's because nicotine is just as addictive as heroin or cocaine. Now, we know that smoking causes damage to lungs, but what exactly does smoking do to our lung tissue? Marcia, I'm looking at, I guess, 3 different lungs here, and only one of them looks healthy.
Well, you got it. This is a healthy lung. You can see the color. It's kind of a light gray tan, completely normal looking.
Wow, what is this over here?
This is one of the most common types of lung tumors that we see in people who smoke. It's actually invading into the blood vessels and into the lymph nodes as well as into the lung. And this patient died from this tumor. And this very common tumor is called squamous cell carcinoma of the lung, and very common in smokers. Then we go over to this awful looking piece, and you can see all of this pigment here, which is not only from breathing our air, but from smoking cigarettes.
So are these the blood vessels right here?
Yes, they are. And you know, this lung right around the blood vessels is very interesting. Let me take you over to the microscope so we can take a look at it.
Okay. First, Dr. Cohen shows me a healthy lung.
This is what the lung looks like under the microscope. And what you see are these multiple air sacs, one right after the other, one touching each other. And in between the air sacs are these teeny little red areas, and those represent the red blood cells that come in there. And when you take a deep breath and bring oxygen into your lung, those red cells pick up the oxygen, then go to the rest of the body and give off that oxygen so you can live and function.
Well, now, what does a lung that smokes look like?
Well, let me show you.
Well, I can't tell if I'm looking at one large air sac or no air sacs at all.
Very good. That's where lots of sacs used to be. What happens when you smoke is you kill the air sacs. You kill the cells that make up that air sac. And so what ends up happening is you have this expanded lung, but no air sacs. And so if you have no air sacs, you have no red blood cells. And if you have no red blood cells,
you have no oxygen.
You got it.
Imagine if you could get vaccinated for an addiction. We've made polio and smallpox things of the past. Perhaps one day an injection will make us immune to the addictive effects of alcohol or heroin. We would take a puff of a cigarette and feel nothing. And for Paul Hoyt, a vaccine would mean he would never have to fear cocaine.
You wake up every day wondering where you're going to get your next high or where you're going to get the money for your next high, and you know, every day is revolved just around that one little piece. You know, whatever else happens in the day doesn't matter as long as you're high. That's the only thing that counts.
Paul is about to enter the world of the future. He is about to become one of the first people to receive a vaccination against cocaine. Dr. Tom Costin of Yale University administers the injection.
We envision the vaccine being helpful to people who are committed to want to be abstinent already. And it's a vaccine that will help people if they use small amounts of cocaine from not feeling the high from the cocaine and not getting that triggering effect that they would get from a small amount, inducing their craving and desire for more cocaine.
The vaccine is made of a protein that stimulates the immune system to make cocaine antibodies. When cocaine enters the system, these antibodies mop up cocaine molecules to keep them from getting to the brain, thus blocking any high. It's the same way vaccines work for viruses and bacteria that cause disease. Today, Paul is one of only 34 people in the world to have antibodies to cocaine flowing through his bloodstream. It's extra help in his quest to stay clean.
It was just a confidence booster, you know, just helped me keep my esteem going, saying, all right, well, we could do this. We don't need to go out and get high. You know, that's what it was good for, just in case, you know, I had something to fall back on.
Being clean of his cocaine addiction has allowed Paul Hoyt to hold a steady job, buy a new car, and repair relationships with his family. He is proud to have played a part in paving the way for the future treatment of addicts.
It was helping other people, and I got help, you know, so you pass it along, really.
Addiction is tragic, but imagine if you passed your compulsive and dangerous habit onto your children. Scientists now believe that the tendency towards addiction is genetic. Tristan Darland, a scientist at Harvard University, is currently searching for the genes that lead to our worst habits. These are his zebrafish, commonly found in home aquariums. Instead of fish food, he is about to give them cocaine. He puts the equivalent of a human dose on one side of the fish tank. The fish goes for it. The next day, he puts a new disc in, this time without cocaine. Compulsively, the fish goes for the disc, hoping for a high. His conclusion, just like humans, zebrafish seem to like the kick that comes from cocaine.
So we found that the response of fish to cocaine is roughly equivalent to what's been reported for other animals, including humans. There's heightened arousal, they jump around more, they're more agitated, there's more aggression. In many respects, the fish is a good model for studying the effects of addictive drugs.
Tristan's zebrafish are ideal for genetic studies. He can raise large families in a limited amount of space. And because addiction is a primitive behavior, if he finds the genes responsible for addiction in fish, there's a good chance they are similar in humans. Darland raises families of both cocaine-addicted and cocaine-resistant fish. He is comparing the genes of the two families and feels he's close to identifying the genes for addiction.
The hope is, of course, that we're going to find several genes involved in drug addiction. We're going to use these genes as a screen for families so that we can find out in an early age potential addicts and help them before they get started.
Someday, genetic screening, new drugs, and even a vaccine may give us freedom from the burden of addiction. For now, conquering addiction requires hard work, determination, and a willingness to get help.
There is so much help out there just for the asking.
Humble yourself and begin to face the fact that there is a better life out there.
Keep watching. Discussion topics and activity and resources for addiction are up next on Assignment Discovery. Now that you've seen addiction, talk about this. Genetic research has shown that some people inherit a predisposition to addiction. What precautions can be taken to avoid chemical reliance? Compare and contrast the brain chemistry of an addict to that of a non-addict. What makes breaking the cycle of addiction difficult? Now try this. Compare and contrast the addictive behaviors associated with two or more substances. Make a chart of the physical, emotional, and social effects of these addictions. Include possible treatments. For videos, CD-ROMs, lesson plans, and teacher resources on this topic and more, log on to discoveryschool.com.